Dr. Park, Mira wiped the sweat from her forehead as she bent over the sample container. The alien soil glowed with a soft blue light that made her smile. 3 months on Kepler-4 for to see, and they were still finding new things every day. The planet was supposed to be empty, just rocks and strange plants, but it was turning out to be much more interesting. "Hey Myra, come look at this," called Dr. Kim Young from across the research tent. He was holding up a crystalline formation that pulsed with inner light. "I think we found something that might be alive." Mira walked over to examine the crystal. It was warm to the touch and seemed to respond to their presence by glowing brighter. She had never seen anything like it in her 15 years as a xenobiologist. The discovery could change everything they knew about life in the universe. "We need to document this properly," she said, already thinking about the reports they would send back to Earth. "This could be the first confirmed alien life form we have found." The research station was small but well equipped. 5 scientists had volunteered for the 2-year mission to study this distant world. They lived in connected domes that protected them from the planet's thin atmosphere. Solar panels and a small reactor provided power. Everything was designed to be simple and reliable. Dr. Li Jin was monitoring communications when the first warning came through. "Myra, we have a problem," he called out from the comm station. "I am picking up ships approaching the system, big ones." Myra felt her stomach drop. They were supposed to be alone out here. The nearest human colony was 3 months away by faster than light travel. No one else should be in this system. "How many ships?" she asked, already moving toward the communication equipment. "At least 12, maybe more." "They are not responding to our signals," Li Jian replied, his voice getting higher with worry. Through the observation dome's clear walls, Myra could see points of light growing brighter in the dark sky. The ships were coming fast, much faster than any human vessel could travel. Her training kicked in, and she started thinking about emergency procedures. "Everyone, listen carefully," she announced to the team. "We need to secure all research data immediately. These are hostile contacts. We cannot let our discoveries fall into the wrong hands." Dr. Songhai and Dr. Nam Wu started backing up files to secure storage devices while Li Jin tried to establish contact with the approaching fleet. Yoon began destroying sensitive equipment according to protocol. They had drilled for this situation, but never expected to face it. The ships appeared overhead like dark clouds blocking out the stars. They were massive, each one easily 10 times larger than the biggest human warship. Their surfaces were smooth and gray, with no visible weapons or markings. They moved in perfect formation without making any sound. "They are scanning us," Li Jin reported. Heavy sensor sweeps across the entire facility. Mira made a quick decision. "Start the data wipe. Everything goes. We cannot risk these discoveries being used against humanity." Her fingers flew across the computer interface, entering destruction codes that would erase years of research. It hurt to destroy their work, but she knew it was the right choice. The alien life forms they had discovered could be used to create terrible weapons if they fell into hostile hands. The first energy beam struck the communications array, turning it into molten metal in seconds. Its attack was precise and controlled, designed to disable rather than destroy. More beams followed, targeting the power generators and defensive systems. "They want us alive," Mira realized. "This is not a random attack. They know exactly what they are doing." Landing craft emerged from the larger ships, small and fast vessels that approached the research station from multiple directions. Through the dome's transparent walls, Myra could see tall, gray-skinned figures moving with purpose toward their facility. "The data wipe is almost complete," Songhai called out. 30 more seconds. The aliens cut through the station's outer walls like they were made of paper. Their weapons produced focused energy beams that sliced through the strongest materials humanity had developed. The breach alarms screamed as atmosphere began venting into the thin planetary air. Yoon was hit by debris when the main laboratory wall collapsed. He fell hard, blood streaming from a head wound. Mira ran to help him, ignoring the danger as alien soldiers poured through the breach. The creatures were taller than humans, with elongated limbs and large black eyes. Their skin was smooth and gray, almost like polished stone. They wore form-fitting armor and carried weapons that hummed with contained energy. They moved with cold efficiency, like machines rather than living beings. Data wipe complete song. Hi announced just before an energy blast struck her console. The woman fell backward, her body smoking from the alien weapon's impact. Mira knelt beside Yoon, crying to stop his bleeding while alien soldiers surrounded them. One of the creatures stepped forward, taller than the others and wearing different armor. It spoke in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "Okay, you are Dr. Park, Mira," it stated rather than asked. "Okay, you will come with us." "I am not going anywhere," Mira replied, still protecting her wounded colleague. The alien leader gestured to its soldiers. Energy beams struck Li Jin and Nam Wu before they could react. The two men collapsed, their bodies still and lifeless. Song Hai was already dead from the first attack. "Your companions are no longer required," the alien explained in its emotionless voice. "You alone have the genetic markers we need for our research." Myra felt rage building inside her chest. These creatures had murdered her friends and colleagues in cold blood. They had destroyed years of important scientific work. Now they wanted to take her for some unknown purpose. "What do you want with me?" she demanded. "Your species has become a concern to the hegemony," the alien replied. "Humans expand too quickly and adapt too easily. You represent a threat that must be understood and controlled." More aliens entered the ruined station, carrying strange equipment that looked like medical devices. They set up a containment field around Mira and the dying Yoon, trapping them in a bubble of energy. "We have studied your kind from a distance," the alien leader continued. "Your unpredictable nature makes you dangerous. We will create better versions of humanity, ones that serve the greater order of the galaxy." Mira watched helplessly as Yoon's breathing became weaker. The head wound was too severe, and they had no medical supplies. Her friend and colleague was dying in her arms, while alien killers stood watching. "You cannot improve on something you do not understand," she told the alien leader. "We understand enough," it replied. "Human genetics are primitive and chaotic. We will remove the flaws and create something more suitable for civilized space." The containment field lifted Mira and the unconscious Yoon into the air. She tried to break free, but the energy barrier was too strong. The aliens carried them toward their landing craft while the research station burned behind them as they loaded her into the alien vessel. Myra took one last look at the planet that had been her home for 3 months. The blue glowing soil samples were scattered across the ground, their secrets lost forever. Her team was dead, their discoveries destroyed, and she was being taken to face an unknown fate. The alien ship's interior was cold and sterile, all smooth surfaces and harsh lighting. They placed Mira in a cell that was barely large enough for a human. Yoon was taken to a different section, though she suspected he would not survive his injuries. As the ship lifted off from the planet's surface, Myra pressed her face against a small window in her cell. Kepler 442c grew smaller below them, a lonely world that had briefly held human dreams and ambitions. Now it was empty again, its alien life forms still glowing in the darkness, waiting for someone else to discover their secrets. The alien leader appeared outside her cell, its black eyes studying her like she was a laboratory specimen. "Do not worry, Dr. Park Myra," it said in its grinding voice. "You will serve a greater purpose than you ever imagined. Through you, humanity will become something far better than what nature created." Mira turned away from the creature and sat down on the narrow bench that served as her bed. She knew that whatever these aliens planned to do with her, it would not end well for the human race. But she also knew that humans were tougher and more adaptable than any alien species realized. They thought they understood humanity, but they were about to learn how wrong they were. The alien research ship was enormous inside. Myra walked through long corridors lined with strange equipment, her hands bound with energy restraints that burned if she tried to break free. 2 alien guards flanked her on each side, their weapons ready but not aimed directly at her. They passed through multiple security checkpoints, each one scanning her with different types of energy. The aliens were taking no chances with their prized specimen. Every few minutes, new creatures would appear to stare at her with their large black eyes, as if they had never seen a human before. "Where are you taking me?" Mira asked one of the guards. The creature did not respond. It seemed like most of the aliens were not allowed to speak to her directly. Only the leader from the planet had been permitted to communicate. The corridor ended at a massive door that slid open silently. Beyond it lay the most advanced laboratory Mira had ever seen. The room stretched out for hundreds of meters in every direction, filled with equipment that hummed with power. Strange lights pulsed in rhythm along the walls and ceiling. Dr. Vexstar stepped forward to greet them. The alien scientist was taller than the soldiers, with skin that seemed to shimmer in the laboratory's bright lights. Its head was larger than the others, suggesting higher intelligence or different breeding. "Welcome to Research Laboratory 7, Vexstar said in perfect human language. "This facility has been prepared specifically for our work with human subjects." Mira looked around the vast space. Dozens of alien scientists worked at stations throughout the lab. Some were studying what looked like genetic samples under powerful microscopes. Others operated machines that created three-dimensional images of DNA structures. "You have been planning this for a long time," she observed. "Indeed. We have been monitoring human expansion for 53 of your years," Vexstar replied. "Your species spreads across the galaxy too quickly and adapts to new environments with disturbing ease. The Hegemony Council has decided that humanity requires management." They led her to an examination table in the center of the laboratory. The surface was made of some kind of crystal that glowed softly when she approached. Mechanical arms descended from the ceiling, each one equipped with different scanning devices. "Do not resist the examination," Vexstar warned. "The process will be much easier if you cooperate." "And if I refuse?" Mira asked. "Then we will proceed anyway, but it will be more painful for you." The scanning began immediately. Beams of light passed through her body from multiple angles, creating detailed images that appeared on floating displays around the table. The aliens could see inside her down to the cellular level. Mira tried to stay calm as the machines probed deeper. It took samples of her blood, skin, and hair. Small needles extracted bone marrow and muscle tissue. The aliens worked with cold efficiency, treating her like a laboratory animal rather than a sentient being. "Fascinating," Vexstar muttered as it studied the results. "Human genetics are even more chaotic than our models predicted. So many redundant systems and evolutionary artifacts. How does your species function with such inefficient design?" "Maybe that inefficiency is what makes us strong," Mira replied. The alien scientist made a sound that might have been laughter. "Strength through chaos. Impossible. Order and control create true power. We will demonstrate this by improving your flawed design." Over the following days, the examinations became more invasive. The aliens mapped every aspect of her biology, from basic genetic structure to complex brain chemistry. They were particularly interested in the parts of human psychology that they found most disturbing. "Your capacity for unpredictable behavior is remarkable," Vexstar explained during one session. "Humans can switch from cooperation to violence in seconds. T. They form emotional bonds that override logical thinking. Keys. P's. Species. Extremely dangerous. K. Those traits also make us creative and adaptable, Mira pointed out. Creativity without control is destruction, the alien replied. We will preserve the useful aspects of human intelligence while removing the chaotic elements. The cloning laboratory occupied an entire section of the research ship. Mira was forced to watch as the aliens prepared to create her duplicate. Giant tanks filled with glowing liquid lined the walls. Each tank could grow a full-size human in a matter of days. The acceleration process is one of our greatest achievements, Vexstar said proudly. What takes nature decades to accomplish, we can complete in less than 1 week. The genetic modification equipment was equally impressive. The aliens could alter DNA with precision that human science could not match. They planned to remove genes associated with aggression and independence while enhancing intelligence and compliance. You are making a mistake, Mira warned as she watched them prepare her genetic material. Human traits are more connected than you realize. Change one thing, and you might break everything else. We have successfully modified hundreds of species, Vexstar replied. Human genetics may be chaotic, but they are not beyond our understanding. The first clone began growing in Tank 7. Myra could see the tiny embryo developing at an incredible rate. Within hours, it had reached the size of a newborn. The next day, it looked like a child. The aliens monitored every stage of development, making adjustments to the growth process. The modifications are integrating well, one of the technicians reported. Intelligence enhancement is proceeding as planned. Aggression suppressors are active. Client's markers are expressing normally. Myra watched her duplicate grow and felt sick. The creature in the tank looked exactly like her, but the aliens were changing its fundamental nature. They were creating something that wore her face but lacked her humanity. Why me specifically? She asked Vexstar, or billions of humans. What makes me special? Your psychological profile, the alien explained. You demonstrate high intelligence combined with strong protective instincts. You are creative, but also practical. These traits, properly controlled, will create an ideal human servant. Mira felt anger building in her chest. The galaxy requires order. Humans will have a place in that order, but not as independent actors. Your species is too unpredictable to be trusted with freedom. By the 4th day, the clone had reached full adult size. It floated in the tank, unconscious but fully formed. The aliens had grown a perfect copy of Mira's body, though they claimed the mind would be completely different. The neural pathways have been extensively modified, Vexstar explained as it studied brain scans of the developing clone. We have removed the capacity for rebellion and enhanced the desire to please authority figures. Okay? This version of you will be everything humanity should be. You have no idea what you are doing, Mira said quietly. We have every idea. This clone will be the first of a new human subspecies, intelligent enough to be useful, but compliant enough to be controlled. We will replace your chaotic race with something far superior. The clone's eyes opened for the first time on the 5th day. Mira stared at her own face, looking back at her through the tank's transparent walls. The duplicate's expression was blank and peaceful, showing none of the anger or fear that Mira felt. Preparation for activation will begin shortly, one of the technicians announced. All systems are operating within normal parameters. Vexstar approached the tank with obvious satisfaction. Behold, the future of humanity, it declared. Order arising from chaos. Control replacing randomness. This is what your species will become. The clone blinked slowly and seemed to focus on the aliens surrounding its tank. Its mouth moved as if it was trying to speak, though no sound emerged through the liquid environment. Brain activity is higher than expected, a technician reported. Neural development exceeded our projections during the final growth phase. Relevant, Vexstar replied. The modifications will ensure proper behavior, regardless of raw intelligence levels. Mira noticed something that the aliens had missed. The clone's eyes were not blank and empty as they appeared. There was something moving behind them, a spark of awareness that seemed familiar yet different. The creature in the tank was thinking, and its thoughts were not following the patterns the aliens expected. The activation chamber is ready, another technician announced. We can begin the awakening process at your command. Vexstar nodded and began entering commands into a control panel. Begin activation sequence. Let us see what we have created. The tank began draining as the clone prepared to take its first breath of air. Mira watched her duplicate's chest rise and fall as it adapted to breathing outside the growth medium. The creature's eyes became more focused and alert with each passing moment. Welcome to consciousness, Vexstar said to the clone as the tank finished emptying. You are the first of your kind, the beginning of a new and better humanity. The clone said nothing, but its eyes moved to focus on the alien scientist. There was something in that gaze that made Mira shiver, though she could not explain why. The creature looked like her, but there was something fundamentally different about its presence. Vital signs are stable, a technician reported. All biological systems are functioning normally. The subject appears ready for initial behavioral testing. Vexstar smiled, an expression that looked wrong on the alien's inhuman features. Excellent. Begin the evaluation protocols. Let us see how successful our improvements have been. The clone stood in the center of the laboratory, water from the growth tank still dripping from her naked body. She looked exactly like Dr. Park Mira in every physical detail, but something was different about the way she held herself. Her posture was too straight, too alert, like a predator pretending to be prey. Subject designation Moreau 1, Vexstar announced to the research team. Begin basic response testing. One of the alien technicians stepped forward with a simple command. Sit down. The clone immediately sat on the floor, her movements smooth and controlled. She showed no emotion, no hesitation, no sign of independent thought. The aliens nodded with satisfaction at her instant obedience. Stand and walk to the red marker, came the next instruction. Again, perfect compliance. The clone moved exactly as directed, stopping precisely at the indicated spot. Her face remained blank and expressionless throughout the test. To the watching aliens, she appeared to be everything they had hoped to create. Excellent results, Vexstar recorded in its notes. The compliance modifications are functioning perfectly. The subject shows no signs of the rebellious behavior typical of unmodified humans. Dr. Mira watched from her restraint chair, unable to look away from her duplicate. The clone's actions seemed normal on the surface, but something felt wrong. The movements were too precise, too calculated. It was like watching someone pretend to be obedient while planning something else entirely. Tell us your name, an alien researcher commanded. I am Myro 1, the clone replied in a voice identical to the original. It's called, I exist to serve the hegemony and bring order to chaos. The aliens were pleased with this response. It matched exactly what their programming was supposed to produce. A human who understood her place in their ordered universe and accepted it willingly. But the real Myra noticed something the aliens missed. When the clone spoke those words, her eyes flickered for just a moment. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it suggested that the creature was thinking thoughts she was not expressing out loud. What is your purpose? Vexstar asked. To demonstrate that humanity can be improved through proper guidance, the clone answered smoothly. To show that chaos can be replaced with order and destruction with construction. Perfect words. It's exactly what the genetic modifications were designed to produce. The aliens congratulated each other on their success. already planning to create thousands more clones based on this template. They moved the clone to a containment cell for extended observation. The room was designed to hold any known species in the galaxy, with walls made of quantum-locked material and an atmosphere carefully controlled by the ship's computers. Multiple cameras monitored every angle, recording the subject's behavior for analysis. The holding chamber is escape-proof, Vexstar explained to its team. We have tested it against the strongest and most intelligent species in the galaxy. Nothing has ever broken free from quantum-locked containment. The clone sat quietly on a single bench provided for her comfort. She had been given simple clothing and food, both of which she accepted without comment. To all appearances, she was a model prisoner, content with her situation and grateful for the care she received. Hours passed in apparent calm. The clone ate when food was provided, drank when offered water, and rested when the lights were dimmed for a sleep cycle. She answered questions when asked, but never initiated conversation. The aliens recorded her behavior as evidence of successful psychological conditioning, but Dr. Mira, still held in a different section of the ship, felt increasingly uneasy. Through the vibrations in the ship's structure, she could sense that something was wrong. Her scientific training told her that the genetic modifications the aliens had described were too simple for the complexity of human consciousness in her cell. Myro once sat motionless for 6 hours after the lights dimmed. Italians monitoring her assumed she was sleeping, but her brain activity readings showed something different. Her neural patterns were far more active than normal sleep would produce. Her enhanced mind was working on problems the aliens never imagined she would consider. The clone had spent every waking moment since her activations studying her environment. While appearing docile and compliant, she had been analyzing every detail of her prison. Her enhanced intelligence allowed her to process information at speeds far beyond normal human capability. She had identified 17 different materials used in the cell's construction. She had mapped the exact locations of all surveillance equipment. She had calculated the power requirements for the containment field and identified the frequency generators that maintained the quantum locks. Most importantly, she had realized that the aliens had made a fundamental error in their modifications. Instead of suppressing her human nature, they had amplified it. Her protective instincts were stronger than any normal human's. Her pattern recognition abilities were enhanced beyond anything they had intended, and somewhere in the ship, she could sense the presence of another version of herself. Ligi, original Myra, was calling to her through methods the aliens could not detect or understand. Its human pack bonding instincts, modified and enhanced, created a connection that transcended physical barriers. The clone began to understand her true situation. She was not the perfected human the aliens believed they had created. She was something far more dangerous, a creature with enhanced human capabilities, but without the social conditioning that normally kept those abilities in check. Her anger began to build slowly, like a fire that starts with a single spark. The aliens had murdered her sister's research team. They destroyed years of scientific work. They had kidnapped and imprisoned the person whose memories and instincts she somehow shared. The modifications had been intended to create compliance and submission. Instead, they had created something that felt protective rage more intensely than any normal human ever could. The pack bonding instincts that the aliens tried to control had become the source of her growing fury. Mira 01 continued to sit quietly on her bench, but inside her enhanced mind, she was planning. Her intelligence allowed her to see solutions that would never occur to unmodified humans. Her enhanced physical capabilities would let her act on those solutions with deadly precision. She had identified the harmonic frequency that would disrupt the quantum locks on her cell door. The aliens' own technology would provide the tools she needed to escape. Their surveillance systems had blind spots she could exploit. Pure to protocols, had weaknesses she could turn against them. Most importantly, she had realized that the aliens fundamentally misunderstood what they had created. They expected a compliant servant who would follow orders without question. Instead, they had made something that combined human creativity with enhanced capabilities and fewer moral restraints. The clone's breathing remained steady, calm, while her mind raced through possibilities. She calculated exact angles of attack, predicted likely responses from her captors, and planned contingencies for every scenario she could imagine. Her enhanced pattern recognition showed her dozens of ways to cause maximum damage with minimal resources. When the lights came back on to signal the start of a new day cycle, my Rogue One was ready. She had spent the entire night planning her escape and the revenge that would follow. The aliens had wanted to create a better human, but they had made something that was human nature, unleashed and amplified. "Good morning, subject," one of the technicians said through the cell's communication system. "How did you rest?" "Very well, thank you," the clone replied in the same docile tone she had used since activation. "I am grateful for your care and consideration." The aliens noted her continued compliance and marked it as further evidence of successful conditioning. They had no idea that behind those calm words, a storm was building that would soon tear their research vessel apart. The clone stood up from her bench and walked to the center of her cell. She appeared to be stretching after a long rest, but she was actually positioning herself at the exact spot where her voice would create the greatest resonance with the containment field generators. "Is there anything you require?" the technician asked. Myro One smiled for the first time since her activation. It was an expression that looked peaceful and grateful. But there was something behind it that would have terrified the aliens if they had been capable of recognizing it. "No," she said quietly. "I have everything I need." Then she began to sing. The sound that emerged from her throat was unlike anything the aliens had ever heard. It was not music in any conventional sense, but rather a carefully calculated frequency designed to exploit the resonance properties of quantum-locked matter. Her enhanced vocal cords could produce tones with precision that normal humans could never achieve. The containment field began to vibrate. The quantum locks started to fluctuate as harmonic interference disrupted their stability. Warning alarms began to sound throughout the research section as the ship's computers detected containment failure. "Possible," Vexstar muttered as it watched the readings. Nothing can break quantum locks through sound alone. But the clone was not using sound alone. She was using enhanced intelligence to exploit a weakness in alien technology that they had never considered. Her modifications had given her capabilities they never intended, and she was about to show them exactly what they had created. Red lights flashed throughout the research vessel as alarms screamed their warnings. Emergency blast doors began sealing automatically, but Myro One was already moving faster than the ship's security systems could react. Her enhanced reflexes and intelligence allowed her to predict each defensive measure before it activated. "Containment breach in Section 7, the ship's computer announced in its emotionless voice. All personnel evacuate immediately. Security teams respond to Level 3. Vexstar stared at the monitor, showing the empty cell in disbelief. How is this possible? The quantum locks were designed to hold anything in the galaxy. The clone appeared on the corridor cameras, moving with fluid grace toward the laboratory sections. She showed no sign of panic or confusion, despite being in an alien environment. Instead, she moved like she had studied the ship's layout for years rather than hours. "Stop." Vexstar ordered the security teams. "Use non-lethal force only. The subject must not be damaged." The first group of alien soldiers rounded the corner, expecting to find a confused and frightened human. Instead, they found Myro One waiting for them with a piece of metal piping she had torn from the wall. Her enhanced strength had ripped through materials that should have been impossible to break. The clone moved like lightning. Her first strike crushed the lead soldier's weapon before it could fire. Her second blow sent the creature flying backward into its companions. The aliens had never encountered anything that combined human unpredictability with enhanced physical capabilities. Target is displaying unexpected combat abilities. One of the surviving soldiers reported over the communication system, requesting heavy weapons authorization. Negative, Vexstar replied quickly. The subject must be taken alive. Use sedative gas. But when the sleep gas filled the corridor, it had the opposite effect the aliens expected. The clone's modified biology processed the chemicals differently, turning the sedative into a stimulant that made her faster and stronger. Her eyes began to glow with an inner light as her enhanced metabolism went into overdrive. Myro 1 began hunting through the ship with terrifying efficiency. She had memorized the voices of every alien who had participated in her creation during the hours she spent pretending to be compliant. Now she was tracking them down, one by one. The first technician died in Laboratory 3, crushed by equipment that the clone had turned into a weapon. The creature barely had time to scream before Miro 1 moved on to her next target. She left no evidence except the destroyed machinery and a growing sense of terror among the research staff. She is systematically eliminating the research team, one of the surviving aliens reported. The subject appears to have perfect knowledge of ship layout and personnel locations. Vexstar was beginning to understand the magnitude of their mistake. The intelligence enhancements were more extensive than we calculated. She is not just stronger and faster. She thinks differently than any human we have studied. Dr. Myra felt the ship shaking as explosions echoed through the hull. From her restraint chair, she could hear the sounds of combat getting closer. Her duplicate was fighting her way through the vessel, and the aliens were losing badly. The clone had discovered the ship's chemical storage areas and was creating explosive devices from common laboratory supplies. Her enhanced knowledge let her combine elements in ways that produced devastating results. Each blast damaged critical systems and created more chaos for her enemies. She is destroying our research, a technician reported in panic. Decades of work are being lost. The data can be replaced. Vexter replied coldly. The subject cannot. She represents the future of our human breeding program. But Myro 1 had no intention of being captured again. She moved through the ship like a force of nature, turning the aliens' own technology against them. Emergency bulkheads became weapons when she overloaded their closing mechanisms. Gravity generators became traps when she reversed their polarity. The clone's enhanced senses allowed her to track the original Myra through the ship's structure. She could feel her sister's presence like a beacon calling to her across the metal corridors. The pack bonding instincts that the aliens had tried to control now drove her forward with unstoppable determination. The primary research laboratory is under attack, came the next report. The subject has breached the main security door. Vexstar and his remaining team tried to barricade themselves in the central lab. But their defenses were useless against an enemy who understood their technology better than they did. Myro 1 had spent hours analyzing every system in the facility while pretending to be docile. The clone appeared in the doorway like an avenging angel. Her clothes were torn and stained with alien blood, but she showed no signs of fatigue or injury. The modifications had given her endurance far beyond normal human limits. "You made a mistake," she said to Vexstar in a voice that was calm and controlled. "You thought you could improve on human nature, but you never understood what you were working with." The alien scientist backed away, its large black eyes wide with fear. "You are malfunctioning. The modifications should have made you compliant and peaceful." "The modifications did exactly what genetics always do," the clone replied. "They amplified what was already there. You enhanced my intelligence, my strength, my protective instincts. But you never considered what would happen when a human felt truly threatened. Myro 1 began systematically destroying the cloning equipment, while Vexstar watched helplessly. Decades of research disappeared in minutes as she reduced their most advanced technology to scrap metal. Her enhanced strength made short work of machines that had taken years to build. "Stop," Vexstar pleaded. "We can negotiate. We can find a peaceful solution." The clone paused in her destruction and looked directly at the alien leader. "You murdered my sister's friends. You destroyed her research. You tried to turn me into a slave. What exactly did you think would happen?" She resumed her work, tearing apart the genetic modification systems with methodical precision. Each piece of equipment was destroyed completely, ensuring that the aliens could never recreate their experiments. The laboratory that had taken decades to build was reduced to rubble in less than an hour. The ship's internal systems began failing as the clone sabotage spread through the vessel. She had identified the critical components that kept the massive ship operational and was targeting them with surgical precision. Warning lights flickered and died as power systems overloaded. "The main reactor is becoming unstable," a technician reported over the failing communication system. "We need to evacuate immediately." But Myro 1 was not finished with her revenge. She had located the section where the original Myra was being held and was fighting her way toward it. Nothing the aliens threw at her could slow her down. Their weapons were ineffective against her enhanced reflexes, and their tactics were useless against her superior intelligence. The clone found Dr. Mira strapped to an examination table in Medical Laboratory 5. The original had been prepared for another round of tissue sampling when the escape began. Now she looked up at her duplicate with a mixture of amazement and terror. "You came for me," Myra whispered. "Of course I did," the clone replied as she broke the restraints with her bare hands. "We are family. That means something to humans, even modified ones." Together, they moved through the dying ship toward the escape pods. Behind them, the research vessel was tearing itself apart as critical systems failed. The aliens had created something they could not control, and now they were paying the price for their arrogance. "The ship is lost," Vexstar reported to the hegemony fleet. "The experiment has failed completely. A human subject has escaped and destroyed our entire research program." The alien leader's last transmission was cut short as another explosion rocked the vessel. Somewhere in the ship's structure, Myro 1 had found one more critical system to destroy. The research vessel that had been the pride of the hegemony science fleet was now nothing more than a floating wreck. As the two Myras reached the escape pod bay, the clone turned back for one last look at the destruction she had caused. The ship that had represented alien superiority and human weakness was now proof of exactly the opposite. "They thought they understood us," she said quietly. "But they never realized that our chaos is also our strength." The escape pod launched, just as the research vessel's reactor went critical. Behind them, the ship that had housed decades of alien research disappeared in a flash of light. The experiment designed to create a controllable human had instead created something that no force in the galaxy could contain. The clone had learned what it meant to be human, and the aliens had learned why humanity was truly dangerous. The rescue fleet arrived 3 days after the research vessel's destruction. Commander Kongde stood on the bridge of his warship, staring at the debris field that had once been the most advanced alien research facility in the galaxy. Twisted metal and strange technology drifted in space like the remains of a terrible experiment. "Sir, we are detecting 2 human life signs in an escape pod," reported Lieutenant Park Jun. "The pod appears to be of alien design, but is transmitting human identification codes. Bring them aboard immediately," Kongde ordered. "And prepare the medical bay. We have no idea what condition they might be in." Dr. Han Sol waited in the docking bay as the alien escape pod was brought inside. She had volunteered for this rescue mission specifically because of her expertise in genetics and alien biology. The reports they had received suggested something unprecedented had happened aboard the destroyed vessel. The pod's door opened with a hiss of escaping atmosphere. Dr. Park, Myra, stepped out first, looking tired and weak, but essentially unharmed. Behind her came someone who looked exactly like Mira, but moved with fluid grace that seemed almost inhuman. "I am Dr. Park Mira," the original said to the rescue team. "This is my sister." Dr. Han Sol studied the second woman with growing amazement. Every detail was identical to the first, from facial features to body structure. But there was something different about her presence, an intensity that made the air around her seem to vibrate with energy. "Cloning," Han Sol whispered. "They, actually, managed to clone a human being." The clone stepped forward and spoke in a voice that was exactly like Myra's, but somehow carried more weight. "I am Myra 1. The aliens created me from her genetic material, okay? But their modifications had unexpected results." Commander Kongde arrived in the docking bay and immediately noticed the tension in the air. His soldiers were standing at alert positions without being ordered to do so. Something about the clone triggered their military instincts, even though she appeared completely peaceful. "What happened to the alien ship?" he asked. "It was destroyed," the clone replied simply. "The research facility and all its data were eliminated. The aliens will not be able to repeat their experiments." Dr. Han Sol began her examination of both women in the ship's medical bay. The original Myra showed signs of stress and minor injuries, but was essentially normal. The clone, however, was unlike anything she had ever encountered. "Your bone density is 30% higher than normal," Han Sol reported as she studied the scan results. "Your muscle fibers are more efficient. IAs, your brain shows neural pathways that do not exist in unmodified humans." The aliens tried to improve their version of humanity, Myro 1 explained. "They enhanced intelligence, strength, and reflexes while attempting to suppress independence and aggression. They succeeded in the first part, but failed completely in the second." The examination revealed the full extent of the modifications. The clone could process information faster than any computer, react to threats before they fully materialized, and solve complex problems in seconds. She also felt emotions more intensely than normal humans, particularly protective feelings toward those she considered family. "This is revolutionary," Dr. Han Sol said to Commander Kongde in private. "She represents a new stage in human evolution. The capabilities she possesses could change everything." "Is she dangerous?" the commander asked. "It's two enemies, extremely. It's two friends and family. She would die before allowing harm to come to them." The aliens enhanced human pack bonding instincts along with everything else. News of the rescue spread quickly through human space. Scientists and military leaders demanded to study the clone, while politicians debated the implications of enhanced human genetics. Some saw her as a weapon that could ensure human dominance in the galaxy. Others feared what might happen if her abilities were replicated. The clone herself remained calm during the debates about her future. She spent most of her time with the original Mira, learning about human culture and history. The two women developed a bond that went beyond normal family relationships, sharing thoughts and emotions in ways that amazed observers. "We are connected somehow," the original Myra explained to Dr. Han Sol. "It's not telepathically, but through instincts and responses that feel completely natural." The genetic modifications may have created quantum entanglement between your neural patterns, the doctor theorized. The aliens were working with forces they did not understand. Meanwhile, the hegemony fleet had received reports of the research vessel's destruction. The Alien Council met in emergency session to discuss the implications of their failed experiment. "The human subject destroyed our most advanced facility and eliminated our entire research team," reported Admiral Quindell. "The creature we created is beyond our ability to control or contain. How many humans possess these enhanced capabilities? Asked Council Leader Centaur. Only one, as far as we know. But the genetic modifications appear to be stable and potentially hereditary. This could be the beginning of a new human subspecies. The alien leaders realized they had made a catastrophic mistake. Instead of creating a controllable human servant, they had accelerated human evolution by centuries. The clone represented everything they feared about humanity, but with capabilities that made her nearly unstoppable. Back on the human rescue ship, Miro 1 was adapting to her new environment with remarkable speed. She learned to operate human technology in minutes, mastered combat techniques after a single demonstration, and showed an intuitive understanding of military strategy that impressed seasoned officers. But it was her emotional development that surprised everyone the most. The clone experienced friendship, loyalty, and love with an intensity that was both beautiful and frightening. When she formed bonds with people, those relationships became the center of her existence. She cares more deeply than any human I have ever met, Commander Kongde observed. But that same intensity could make her extremely dangerous if those she cares about are threatened. Dr. Han Sol continued her studies, trying to understand the full implications of the alien modifications. The genetic changes were complex and interconnected, affecting everything from physical capabilities to emotional responses. Most importantly, they appeared to be permanent and heritable. If she has children, they will likely inherit these enhanced traits, she reported. We could be looking at the beginning of a new branch of human evolution. The clone expressed interest in having a family someday, but only after ensuring that humanity was safe from alien threats. Her protective instincts extended beyond her immediate family to include the entire human species. The aliens made me to be a servant, she explained to the assembled scientists and military leaders. Instead, they created someone who will ensure that humanity never serves anyone. Intelligence reports began arriving from human colonies throughout the galaxy. Word of the clone's existence and the destroyed alien research facility was spreading rapidly. Some alien species were retreating from human space, while others were considering preemptive attacks before more enhanced humans could be created. The balance of power in the galaxy has shifted, reported the intelligence officer. Every species now views humanity as either a valuable ally or an existential threat. The clone reviewed these reports with growing concern. Her enhanced intelligence allowed her to see patterns and possibilities that others missed. The aliens' attempt to control humanity had instead made the species more dangerous than ever before. They were right to fear us, she said quietly to her sister. But their fear caused them to create exactly what they were trying to prevent. Dr. Mira nodded in agreement. They saw human unpredictability as a weakness to be corrected. They never realized it was our greatest strength. As the rescue fleet prepared to return to human space, the two sisters stood together, looking out at the stars. The galaxy had changed forever because of what the aliens had tried to do. Humanity now possessed capabilities that could ensure their survival and dominance among the stars. But with those capabilities came responsibilities that would challenge the species for generations to come. The clone represented both humanity's greatest triumph and its most dangerous evolution. What happens now? The original Myra asked. Myra 01 smiled, an expression that carried both hope and determination. Now we show the galaxy what humans can really become when they stop trying to be something else. The enhanced human had learned the most important lesson of all. The aliens' attempt to improve humanity had instead proven that humans were already perfect, exactly as they were. Okay? Their chaos, their unpredictability, okay? Their fierce protective instincts were not flaws to be corrected, but strengths to be celebrated. And now, with those strengths enhanced beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen, humanity was ready to take its place as the dominant force among the stars.